So you have created comic books. What's inspired you to create in this format, which is very different from the paper and the illustrative work?
Well, I think as kids, most kids love cartoons and comics, and you know, you carry that. Some people carry that through to adulthood, and I've dabbled in the comic making. Well, not long comics. I'm talking about little cartoons. I've dabbled in that over the years. I've always been attracted to that form of communication. I think you're combining words with pictures. And there's nothing greater. I love that a picture speaks 1,000 words. And it's beautiful when you just see an image and you can just absorb it and take it all in. But it's another level when you're combining words with pictures. I think it's just another dimension to creativity. And I think there's nothing, I find there's nothing more fulfilling that I've done than writing the comic that I wrote, because I love writing, and I'm not necessarily, it's not my strength, but I'm probably just good enough to do something like a comic rather than writing a big novel, you know. So it was a good format for me to have a first go at writing something. And I guess the ironic thing is I don't like comedy movies. I don't watch a lot of comedies. I find a lot of some of the modern comedies just not amusing. So I think I've got a pretty good sense of humour. So I think comics is one way you can express a sense of humour. So I think the comic writing, the inspirations, well, from childhood, you know, reading comics in the papers, and just wanting to combine the writing and the pictures, I think is really the motivation.
Have you got a copy of that, your first comic?
No, it's
downstairs. Never mind, we'll pop that in later on.
Yes.
But you've written or published two little comic books.
Self-published.
Self-published two little. Would you call them? Well, they're not graphic novels, but short
comics.
Short comics.
Short comics, I call them. They're only 12 pages each, so they're quite short.
How many panels would you say were in the comics? Did you work that out? How many panels per page you would have?
Probably 3 or 4 per page. But some of them weren't panels. They were a combination of like one sort of panel and a picture next to it, or you know. So try to mix up the panel sort of layout.
But having not watched much comedy, your actual comic was quite funny. It had some really good puns in it.
Very humorous. And it's a comedy mystery. Comedy
mystery. and it's set in a restaurant.
Yes, a Chinese restaurant.
And that's sort of like influence from your culture.
That's right. I'm half Chinese. Yep.
And you had a way of putting in those little funny moments between the characters that I certainly got a giggle out of it. I think when I saw some kids reading it when I was down last time, they were getting a giggle out of it. And it looks like quite simplistic sort of character design. But I think one of the things that you have a really good tendency to do with your work is make it look simple, but bring through the character personality very well through your storytelling process and the narrative that goes with those characters. So things, to me, I can see that it doesn't have to be a really complex drawing. It's the idea that sits all the way underneath it, and the actual messages that you are wanting to give out to the reader on the way through that is part of your artistic style, isn't it?
And I think it's the same with children's book, genre. I think pictures are part of the process of the storytelling, but the words are probably more, I don't know if more important is the right word, but in terms of conveying a message, the story and the words are quite important, I suppose.
And there's those characters in Who Stole My Spring Roll. They're Chinese characters. There's actually cultural humour in there, isn't there? And it sort of like even in the way that they talk to each other, you
Yes.
can see the different characters
Yes.
have particular personalities
Yes.
and the way that they look at life.
Yes.
And so they're all parts of you. Do you think that
Yes.
they're all parts of
Yes.
you that are having a moment in the limelight,
Yeah.
and then actually having conversations between each other, and
Yeah.
and then you actually package them up in a book format, a comic format, and you've gifted that out to the world.
Yeah, for sure.
Last night you mentioned that that you've sold the comic books and mostly your friends have bought them. What sort of feedback have you got back from people who've read the comics?
Yeah, some of my friends have never read comics, to be honest. It's something that they just wouldn't pick up. And so it's only because I wrote one that they decided, okay, I'm going to give it a go. So I think some of them are a bit out of their comfort zone, because reading a comic is a little bit different than reading, a magazine or reading a novel. So sometimes you have. And I learnt that from talking to one of my friends who's just not used to reading comics. She said, well, I had to kind of look at the pictures and read the words and sort of put it all together in my mind.
Yeah.
And because I've been reading comics since I was a kid, I just...
Natural.
I never thought of that. And
Yeah.
I thought, oh, what do you mean? So, yeah, that was, I guess some of the feedback was they enjoyed it, but it was just a process for them
To work their brains that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and besides that, I think everyone saw the humour in it, and they probably didn't comment much on the cultural aspects of it. I think most people sort of have had some interactions with Chinese people, so they kind of, and Chinese restaurants are quite Australian, cliche type, establishments. So it's sort of, I think people grow up with going to the Chinese restaurant for treat for dinner, so people sort of know roughly what that's all about. So but yeah, you're right. It's because I grew up with my mum who had broken English. She had her own personality, and and because I grew up in Australia, that sort of, I guess it's maybe not a conflict, but that sort of always, I'm not quite sure if I'm Chinese or if I'm Australian, that sort of thing, and being at home, and she was quite, that she'd have her own little superstitions or whatever, and that sort of thing. So it's the sort of merging of cultures, because in that comic, all of the other pig is not Chinese, so there's a couple of characters that aren't Chinese. So yeah, it's it is a multiculturalism in a comic format, but yeah, a little bit of me, like you said. Yeah.